Hello and welcome to the Wilder Lincolnshire podcast from the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust. Out and about today with Steve Lovell. We're outside Lincoln Cathedral for something very special, aren't we?
Oh, the fastest bird of prey, the fastest creature in the world, really, yeah. And something I love, the peregrine falcon.
And we've seen male and female already in the short time we've been here.
We have, yeah. We think there was a prey item brought in, but yes, there was a bit of an exchange between him and her. And so the 4 chicks, I'm sure, are sitting with their bellies full as we speak.
Well, as you can hear, it's quite noisy where we are. That doesn't seem to disturb the peregrines, does it?
No, not at all. And if you throw into the mix the owly chimes as well from Great Tom and everything else, no, they're not bothered. It's all about the food and the sanctuary of the tower, Melvin.
Have they always nested in the same part of the cathedral?
Oh, crikey, it's a bit of a long and checkered history. This is their favoured spot. A nest box was put up for them many, many moons ago, which it's all ever been used by the pigeons of the cathedral, would you believe? Although I think they did nest in there last year. But they prefer where they are on the south side. Well, it's the southeast corner. They did nest on the north side many moons ago. I forget which year it was, but that was due to disturbance from a rogue male who was in the area, and it sort of rather discombobulated the breeding cycle that year.
Now, we've got the 4 main faces of the tower here, but you'd only ever get one pair nesting at the cathedral, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, yeah. There used to be a pair many moons ago nested on Bardney Beet Factory, and they reckon because of the extent of their hunting grounds and how far they go, that probably their territories were just about touching one another.
All the way out to Bardney?
Yeah, and if you think Bardney's 9 miles away, they reckon that probably they'd go 4, maybe 5 miles away from the nest site to hunt, to find the prey and the quarry.
The chimes there, they're not going to frighten the peregrines out, are they?
No, not at all, no.
So why are they here? Why are they on Lincoln Cathedral and going over there now with a food catch, is it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Got a prey item sort of flailing in behind. I think that looks like the male just coming in. Having a bit of a sortie round the tower. They're here principally because they've got a great viewpoint. They've got sanctuary. They know that the chicks will be safe from other predators because something like a crow or something like that could probably take the young elsewhere. So that plenty of food around here, and studies have shown with urban peregrines that probably urban peregrines will probably take anywhere between about 45 and 55% of their diet could be feral pigeons.
Right, and plenty of those around here.
Yeah, there certainly are, yeah.
He's come to rest on the other side of the tower, hasn't he? So just getting in position there, having a look at what he's caught?
Probably what it's doing at the minute. It's probably sat on a ledge there, and it'll probably be sort of plucking and preparing the food items. So whatever it's caught, it'll pull a load of feathers off first, and then it'll take them into the nest site, and then it's easier to sort of, without being too gory, sort of dissect it a bit to give smaller morsels to the chicks.
And what will they do? Will it take little pieces round to the chicks?
No, take the whole item, and then literally pick it off in small pieces and decide how big the young can actually eat at a time.
I couldn't identify. I don't think it was a pigeon, was it? Didn't look quite big enough.
No, I don't think it was a pigeon, no.
A blackbird or something
Might be a blackbird, might be a starling, but, such is the way that they do. The male is only 2/3 the size of a female, so they can. The female's got a bit more power, so they can take a wide range of sort of prey items, really. So you probably see the males bringing in something smaller than the female.
So is there a history then of peregrines being at Lincoln Cathedral?
Way back, local bird watchers would say, "Oh, I think I've seen a peregrine sat in the cathedral," and so reports were coming in. But the first confirmed breeding was in 2007. Up on the south face here, and since then it's been a long and sort of checkered history with 1 or 2 sort of almost like EastEnders incidents sort of involved in there. So
get out of my pub. Get out of my cathedral.
Yeah. So 1 or 2 rogues, 1 or 2 interlopers, but we had a fairly stable pair for many, many years.
Yeah, and then sadly the older female died.
Yeah, she did, sadly. In COVID year 2020, there were no eggs, no chicks, nothing happened, and then 21 again repeat of that, and then 22 again repeat of that. And we think that Then what happened in 2023, sadly, our female, she just literally dropped out of the sky one day, and she's buried somewhere here in the cathedral grounds.
Seems quite fitting,
yeah,
doesn't
it does really. Yeah, it was a really fitting end to her, and we've estimated she was probably about 19 years, which is a good old age. But for those last 3 years, she probably wasn't fertile, so hence why we're getting no chicks. But in true EastEnders style, we ended up with another female moving into territory and successful last year.
So when that new female arrived, did she bring with her mate, or then did it attract males to come round and try and be the favourite?
No, it's still, by all accounts, I've been told that it's still our original male. We did have, I think we had another male sort of coming in as well, and I think there was even another female spotted on one occasion. But this pair have now settled down, and obviously because we've got the YouTube sort of feed and the cameras up there, when you see them in close-up, most peregrines, although they have this black hood on the head, they have this very distinctive individual markings to the hood, so we can actually identify them as individuals. You know, that's the adults. So.
I assume they're not ringed then?
No, they're not ringed. It's just we've often had people say to us, do you ring the chicks or anything like that? But it's so difficult to get in there to get to them. It would represent...
And you don't want to disturb them, do you?
No, you don't, no. But I mean, we have had... we had one bird turn up. It was a second-year bird, so it's a mature bird. It was a female turned up. If I remember correctly, that she was actually a chick that was ringed at Wakefield. So obviously that was a site where they could get rings on them. So.
And I've heard this before, not just Lincoln Cathedral. Cathedrals seem to be popular for peregrines. I suppose it's because it's like a cliff, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's a, well, I won't say a modern day cliff because this is like 1,000 years old, but it is, yeah. It represents a cliff face, good viewpoints, and being able to sort of identify their prey. It just seems strange that they're in the middle of a city, but it's a great way of bringing nature to people.
And what about numbers? I mean, are peregrines becoming more common? What sort of numbers are we talking about?
Well, they are. When you think back, think way back to the mid-60s when finally we got rid of DDT because that was causing eggshell thinning. We've really sort of ramped up in numbers now. And they think, I don't know when the last census was done, but I was always told to work on about 1,600 pairs in the UK. I think it might be a little bit more than that now. And that represents about 20% of the European population. So as a nation, the UK is really, really important for peregrines.
We are really treated here because we've got one sitting back on one of the perch areas there now. And even with the naked eye, you can make out the head colouring, can't you?
You can, yeah. Just that real pale section at the top of the breast. So you've got the black head and then the real pale white section at the breast.
So what about other peregrines in Lincolnshire?
Well, we've got a pair nesting on St James's Cathedral at Louth. We've got a pair nesting on St Wolfram's in Grantham. They're both fairly long-standing pairs.
They're quite religious then, aren't they, peregrines?
Oh, yes. Yeah. They're definitely Church of England, yeah. And they are there, and the Lincolnshire Bird Club have put a little bit of financial sort of clout into that just for the cameras and for the nest box in conjunction with the churches there as well.
Because people love it, don't they? They like to know a bit more about it. Several people have stopped while we're here at the moment sort of wondering what's going on that haven't heard about the peregrines up there, but will stop and take an interest.
Yeah, they will. I mean, you can't help but hear those screeching and wondering what that is as it's overhead as well. I do remember, just one little recollection from when I was project officer way back in 2008 working on behalf of the RSPB here, and I noticed a real sea change. People were saying at the beginning, how are the peregrines doing? And as the project progressed, people were coming along and saying, how are our peregrines doing? It was almost like a term of adoption for them as part of the Lincoln sort of scenery, really.
And you mentioned sort of keeping an eye on them, and there will be chances for the public to come along and have a look through telescopes at them.
Yeah, there will. Yeah, first and foremost, the birds are nesting on the south side, so we've got a lot of keen photographers sort of having a look, trying to get their photographs, and fantastic photographs out there to be seen. But then the RSPB will be setting up a stand just near the Tennyson statue on the East Lawn for the whole of June and July, and telling members of the public, just all about the story and the birds themselves and why they're here and that. So I think it's usually about 10 till 4 on a Saturday and a Sunday.
Yeah. Now, we talk about them being nesting on places like the cathedral here, but if they hadn't got that facility, will they look for something else, like large structures anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, pylons. They love pylons, and obviously pylons is a topic of debate in Lincolnshire at the moment. So, but yeah, so pylons, structures like just over. I mentioned about Bardney Beet Factory, but just over the border at RSPB Langford Lowfields, just near Collingham, they're actually they're down there nesting on one of the quarry sort of conveyors down there. So
really interesting, isn't it? That they obviously find somewhere where they like, and then will they come back to that same place year after year?
Yeah, the pair actually, they have their own territory, as you say, here. This is their territory, but they have an on-season, which is sort of February through to about sort of September, where the males and females really form that real sort of concentrated pair bond because of the chicks and everything. And then they have an off-season, so the male and females live fairly individual lives, but they'll still be here through the winter. One might be on one face of the cathedral, one on the other face. So they're still here.
So they're here all year round?
They're here all year round, but it's more of a close association during the on-season, but a looser association during the off-season.
And what about the building up to the sort of preparing for mating and that sort of thing? Are they displaying to each other?
Yeah, they're displaying. So the male will do he'll do like these almost like fluttery flights that hopefully impresses the female. And it's also about bringing food items in. So the male will show his prowess in the air by going out and catching items and bringing them back to the female. So feather coming down there. So
is it peregrine, or was that pigeon?
I think that feather
food.
is coming off one of the food items they've just brought in, yeah.
And I haven't noticed whether he's gone round from this other face to get round to where the nest is yet.
No, it's probably sat in there still preparing, but they will in times of plenty, if they're catching and there's plenty of prey about, and as the chicks get older, they're more voracious, so they'll want more food. So what they'll do sometimes, they will cache up prey. So if they're catching a lot, they'll prepare it, they'll put it on a little ledge, and if the chicks are saying, come on, food, and you appreciate there's 4 chicks in there, you know, it's really, they're really on it. They want their food.
And this is good news, isn't it? Because we are saying 4 chicks this year.
We are, yeah, 4 chicks. It was a bit of a weird one, really, because there were 4 eggs laid, and they thought that only 3 were going to hatch. And the 3 hatched on the 21st of April. And then 1 actually hatched 2 days later on the 23rd of April. But the parents will actually see that one is maybe a little bit behind, so they might put a bit more food into that to allow it to catch up.
You don't get a situation in a nest there where the dominant ones push out the weaker ones?
No, it's really, you know, we've seen from our video over many years just how you think of these as being a killer of the skies, if you like, but when they're at the nest site, they are so tender and just pulling off little morsels and just going round in turn, making sure the chicks get their fair share.
When we're sort of talking about these sort of things, the wonderful aspect from the general public is you can actually see them on video, can't you? You can see the live feed. You
can, yeah. So it's on YouTube, and it's Lincoln Cathedral peregrines. And yeah, I mean, and the nice thing is, although you're seeing a live feed, you can sort of slide the scale backwards or forwards, and if you find an interesting bit, you can watch that 5-minute pocket on the YouTube, really. So yeah, so it's brilliant to watch. And that's been available from the cathedral point of view because there's sort of already a technical connection there, isn't there? There is a technical connection there, and there's a company called Quickline Communications who have very, very kindly allowed the cameras to be plugged into their sockets and their feeds, etc., and they're up in the bell chamber, and it's given them free links. I mean, so without Quickline Communications, we would not have the YouTube feed because it would have cost quite a lot of money. So where you've got one of the peregrines looking out on that vantage point there at the moment, they'll be looking for food to be flying by, will they? Will they sort of see something at quite a distance and then swoop in and catch? Well, it depends how much they've brought in so far for the chicks and whether the chicks' appetite has been sated, really, for the moment. I noticed there were 2 items on the YouTube yesterday brought in fairly early in the morning. So I think there's one about 8:45, another one about 9:15. So it just really depends on the weather conditions out here. It might depend on how successful they are, and different things will be available at different times. So, And they catch food on the wing, do they? Catch food on the wing. They'll go up on high, which is called waiting on, and then they'll drop down into what's called a stoop, where they sort of tuck everything sort of in, and literally they will hit the prey item from on high, don't know what's hit it, and they try and hit at the sort of the shoulders, if you like, the neck, and then they've got an edge on the bill called the terminal tooth, and that literally severs the spinal cord immediately, because then if you imagine if they've got a prey item and it's fluttering about, it's harder to bring back to the nest site. So they want an instant kill, really. And probably when they're doing those stoops, probably only about 1 in 6 stoops are actually successful.
And it tends to be pigeons, the biggest item that they'll catch?
Well, I think in Britain they've recorded something like 135 different species of bird, and it is, I stress, it is only bird. They'll never come down to the ground for carrion or anything like that. So pigeons are a large part of the diet, particularly here because we're in this situation, but they'll catch all sorts of other items, really. Late May, there's usually quite a few juvenile starlings about, so although they seem fairly small, they're quite easy to pick up, particularly for the smaller male.
We're talking about things that the peregrines might eat. Rachel in the communications team has heard that they can actually catch woodcock. They're quite a big bird, aren't they?
They are, yeah, quite a chunky wading bird with a really long bill, and they are very much active at low light levels, really. There's been some studies shown that peregrines, particularly like we've got in Lincoln and other sort of cities around the country, you've got a lot of ambient light at night, and they reckon that peregrines, bright moonlight, the lights sort of shining up from the street light, they will actually hunt at night.
But they wouldn't go for a bird that's roosting, would they? Because they're going to catch it on the wing.
No, it's always taken on the wing. But quite a few birds nocturnally migrate as well. And so if they're out there, there's enough light, incredible eyesight anyway, you know, whether it's daylight or dark. But it's not a given. They won't go out every night. They'll just pick the right conditions. And obviously, according to how much food the chicks want as well.
And how do they encourage the chicks then to hunt?
Right, well, the first thing is they stop bringing food to the nest site. So they are encouraging the chicks to leave the nest site. So the chicks will then take their initial flights, and okay, if they're all right, they'll sit and wait. The parents will still bring food back, but they will encourage them to leave the realms of the cathedral by calling to them and then taking a piece of prey item up in the air and then dropping it. So the actual youngsters then have to sort of hone their talon skills catching in midair. So
they're catching the dropped food. They're not having to go and chase after something moving as such.
Not chasing. No. I mean, the initial thing is they will do food passes in midair, but then after that it's actually drop food in midair. So the chicks are then learning to bind on with their talons and really get a grip.
We've got some good sightings today, haven't we?
Yeah, we've had some brilliant sightings, yeah, so very active, and you think it's looking a bit gloomy, but peregrines love the wind. They don't like still days. They like to use the wind to their advantage, so a bit of breeze and they're happy.
Thanks to Steve Lovell for telling us about the peregrines at Lincoln Cathedral. Well, we've moved from the cathedral to Whisby, and we're on the nature reserve with Grahame Hopwood, the warden here. And quite an incredible sight, but we're focusing on birds of prey. So we've talked about peregrines at Lincoln Cathedral. Do you get peregrines here at Whisby?
We do. There is a local pair in the area. We keep the exact location very quiet to prevent disturbance. They're very, very difficult to see at this time of year because they are on eggs, and they're very secretive, but they are around.
Now, when we talked about the ones at the cathedral, we know that they're regular ones coming back. Do you know if yours are regular?
We suspect it's the same pair coming back each year, yes.
And they're quite happy with the territory, because it's relatively close to Lincoln Cathedral, isn't it?
Yeah, we're about 7 miles away as the peregrine flies, and that's big enough. They've got big territories, but there's plenty of space, and these are probably birds that have originated from the cathedral, because the juveniles, when they fledge, they have to go somewhere and set up their own home ranges.
So they've been sent away. Go and find your own place.
Absolutely, yes. A bit like sending the kids out to work.
And will their diet be different, do you think, here at Whisby? There's lots of gulls out on the lake today when we're here. Would they decide to go for them? There are plenty of them.
Interestingly, that was one of the things that we were a little bit worried about when peregrines first moved into the area, that they might decimate the black-headed gull population on the islands in the lakes. but they leave them well alone. They just don't touch them at all. They're probably mostly feeding on pigeons, particularly wood pigeons, which are very common in the area.
Diet of choice, it seems. Plenty of pigeons around the cathedral as well.
Absolutely. I think that's probably a favourite prey of the Lincoln peregrines are the feral pigeons, which are very, very common in city centres.
And again, staying with the peregrines, they will be visible most of the year, will they?
Yeah, the best time to see peregrines at Whisby is in the winter time, when they perch very conspicuously on the pylons. At this time of year, they're a little bit more secretive. They are there if you know where to look.
OK, all right. OK, I've got my binoculars. I'll keep my eyes open then. We're talking generally about birds of prey, and I suppose the one that I absolutely love, but perhaps one of the smaller ones, the kestrel that we see hovering. Again, quite common at Whisby, are they?
They are. They're generally quite a common resident in Lincolnshire. We have 2 pairs of kestrels that nest here, both in boxes that have been specially provided for them.
Just 2? 2 pairs?
They've got, like most birds of prey, have quite large territories.
Right.
So we've got 1 pair in the north of the railway line, and we've got another pair south of the railway line. And they do very well. They managed to both pairs managed to fledge young most years.
And what would their diet be?
They're very much small mammals, and probably a few invertebrates, and possibly a few small birds as well. But mostly mammal specialists.
And I suppose good views when they've got young, because they're out hunting all the time.
Yeah, there's a box which can be seen from the wildlife barn, and when it's manned by the volunteers, they'll quite happily show you the young birds just before they fledge, which perch on the edge of the nest box.
Fantastic. Now, staying at Whisby, what else might we see if we're visiting birds of prey wise?
At this time of year, we've got buzzards, which have made a remarkable comeback in the county since the 1980s.
I'm surprised, actually, because there are so many now. I used to get so excited, and it's like an everyday occurrence now, isn't it?
It is, yes. The increase and spread since 2000 has been really nothing short of phenomenal. We've certainly got, most years, 1 pair of buzzards nest at Whisby. Like the peregrines, they become incredibly secretive. They're a big bird, and yet they're very, very apt at hiding in the trees.
Are they?
So the nest can take a little bit of searching out.
And if you see a buzzard flying over, they're quite a bulky bird, aren't they?
They are, yes. Very broad-winged and heavy-bodied. It's certainly now become Lincolnshire's commonest bird of prey, commoner now than kestrels.
And again, food-wise, are they catching food, or is it dead that they're feeding on?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean, they will take carrion, but they're also known to take small birds and small mammals, and supplemented with insects as well.
Now, I mentioned there the buzzard, quite a big, bulky-looking bird. When I was coming past Whisby yesterday, I saw a kite in the air. Now, am I right in thinking the main way of identifying between the two is that the kite will have like a V-shaped tail?
That's correct. They're also a much more rakish-looking bird as well. And once you've learnt the flight silhouette, they're actually not too difficult to tell apart in flight. But you're correct that the forked tail on the red kite is one of the major features to look out for.
Anything else that we might see here at Whisby then?
We have sparrowhawks here, which is another species that's made a very remarkable comeback, considering that they were extinct as a breeding bird in the 1950s due to pesticides and persecution.
Really? Sparrowhawks were extinct?
Correct.
Wow.
And they recolonised rapidly during the 1980s. And they've now probably occupy most of their former range in the county.
And they're the ones that we might sometimes see in our garden, and we have mixed views, don't we? I love seeing the birds of prey, but they can sometimes come through and grab a bird that might be on your feeder.
That's correct, but all birds of prey need to feed, and they are, by their very nature, birds that prey on other things.
Indeed.
And they still have young that need feeding.
Yeah. And will there be many breeding here at Whisby, sparrowhawks?
We usually have 1, possibly 2 pairs breeding here. It's another bird that becomes incredibly secretive during the nesting season. So the way we prove that they have nested is by listening out for the food begging calls of the young once they fledge.
Yeah, you don't do any ringing or anything here?
No, we don't do ringing at Whisby, no.
No. And what about other birds of prey that might be passing through at Whisby?
The other bird which people should look out for at this time of year are hobbies, which are summer migrants, spend the winter in Africa. They've just recently arrived back from their wintering quarters.
They're quite fast, aren't they?
They are. They're like big swifts in flight. They're specialists at catching dragonflies and eating them on the wing. And Whisby is a good place to look out for them along Grebe Lake or over at Teal Lake. They don't nest here, but we did find a nest just off the nature reserve boundary a couple of years ago, so they are certainly in the area.
And isn't it interesting how everything has to come together time-wise? You mentioned there the dragonflies that they will be feeding on. So the insect population has a huge effect on what the bird life is doing as well.
Yeah, it's we're very good for dragonflies here. We're a recognised dragonfly hotspot by the British Dragonfly Society, and it's like everything else. Dragonflies provide food, and everything. When left alone, everything finds its own balance.
Let's spread a bit further afield then as we talk about birds of prey. I mentioned the kite. It's the red kite we're talking about, isn't it? Generally south of the county, but they are coming further north.
They are. Red kites were introduced into various areas of England. I think to the south of the county it was Rockingham Forest in Northamptonshire. They've now become a very, very regular sight anywhere from Sleaford south. Still a little scarce in the Lincoln area, although we've had more records of red kite this year than we had in all previous years. So there is some maybe circumstantial evidence that they are moving into the Lincoln area. Watch this space.
Similar food to the buzzard?
Yeah, they'll very much. They will go for carrion, but they will also take live prey as well.
Although it's good to see the birds of prey around, they're not everybody's favourite, are they? They're
not, no. Unfortunately, there are many incidents of where birds of prey are persecuted, and a lot of these cases are linked to land that is managed for game bird shooting, where unfortunately birds of prey are seen as a threat.
And is that why we had a decline in numbers then in sort of the past, 30, 40 years?
Yeah, it all stemmed from the Victorian era, where anything with a hooked bill was perceived as being vermin, and this Victorian mentality has very much carried through till today. In the 1960s, it was persecution combined with pesticides that decimated a lot of bird of prey populations, but a lot of populations have bounced back. It is illegal under the Wildlife and Countryside Act to shoot or to poison or to kill birds of prey, so they are protected by law.
But thankfully we're seeing numbers going up again now.
We are. Over the past 25 years, buzzards have reclaimed the skies, sparrowhawks are back to their former numbers, and red kites are now commonplace in the south of the county.
OK, where else are we going to see birds of prey around the county then?
For those that wish to look for marsh harriers, I think Farrings Nature Reserve or Willow Tree Fen, which are both Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust reserves, offer excellent opportunities for observing harriers. And in the winter time, not so much at this time of year, anywhere along the coast, but you wouldn't do far wrong going to Gibraltar Point to look out for hen harriers and merlins.
Wow, OK. Plenty to see. It is exciting, and this is a great time of the year to be out and about, isn't it?
The sun's shining, the birds are singing, what's not to like?
Indeed. Well, we hope you've enjoyed the latest edition of the Wilder Lincolnshire podcast from the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust. It's been our Birds of Prey special.